First and foremost, this project allowed us to connect dots and bring people together. Producers, consumers, policymakers, we're the boots on the ground. You're the boots on the ground, USDA, FSA, and CRS. I mean, when you put all of us together, everything's possible. So thank you so much for being here. We know urban agriculture is one component of agriculture, but a very important component, and it's growing, as we heard this morning, and it's growing importance as well, especially to our local food system. Our collective goal through this project was to move from transactional, the things we have to do every day, to relational, the things that we get to do and the why behind what we do. And so we're just grateful that you're here for this session and that you'll be able to help facilitate some of the feedback. There will be a lot of time for you to ask questions, and we'll be facilitating those questions as well. I'd like to welcome our online participants. We have a Zoom audience out there, so welcome to all of you too. We really appreciate you logging in and tuning in. Without further ado, I'm going to invite my wonderful colleague, Kyle Carnuta, to the stage, and she's going to walk us through this great opportunity that's before us.
My computer is restarting. That's so fun. We've got a lot of hardware up here, so hopefully I'll be able to manage all of this. But hello, everyone. I'm Kyle Carnuta. For those who I haven't met, I know I've been trying to get to know all of you individually. Thank you for being here today. Thanks for the folks online. Leisha, is everything good with the online participants? Okay, awesome. We're going to keep this somewhat informal because we've got great working relationships together. But as far as what we're going to cover today, I guess first of all, if you are not someone who works in an urban service center, you're welcome to stay, but this may not be very useful for you. So just think about that. If you are in any of the 10 cities that I haven't had a chance to get to work with, that's fine, welcome to stay. But this session is really meant for anyone who's working in an urban service center. We're going to start the day with just a quick refresher of the curriculum project. So that's what Cornell's been working on. So a project overview, and then specifically for those folks who are working in the 17 urban service centers. I know last year in Atlanta, I promised some updates on timeline for when you're actually going to see the curriculum. We have that update. And then a look at some of the modules and what we are hoping you can help us do when we launch that curriculum. We will take a quick break because we're going to reset the room to then do a stakeholder engagement mini workshop, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So our project overview, just again, this is resetting, refreshing. I've been working on this every day, but I know I haven't been communicating that to you every single day. So just as a reminder, our goal is twofold with this curriculum. So Cornell Cooperative Extension is building a training about urban agriculture for the USDA, for USDA employees. The goal is to establish knowledge about urban agriculture, of course, but then also fostering a sense of community and collaboration between the USDA and urban growers. The folks who are taking the training right now is limited to FSA staff. The first cohort going through the training will be you, so the urban service center staff in the first 17 cities. But we're now getting more information about some of the partners who will be involved, and we think that this training will be open to anyone at the FSA, potentially also folks at NRCS have expressed some interest now too. So just trying to keep you guys informed. And then the timeline for this is a 4-year timeline, and I'll get into that. As far as what the training looks like or will look like and why, we use those two primary goals to inform what our output will look like, so what the actual training will look like. Synchronous and asynchronous learning structures are critical for us to make sure we can get as many people to go through this training as possible while also being as comprehensive and in-depth as possible. So what that means is that asynchronous, not at the same time, we will have most of the training will be available online at your own pace, and that's through AgLearn, which I have now seen, and I kind of like it, so it's gonna be good. But then also we'll have some synchronous components as well. We're really advocating for some in-person training and are hoping that y'all, as the first cohort, will be able to participate in some in-person training next year, especially for some of these more complicated topics like stakeholder engagement. We think that lends itself to an in-person setting, and that's one of the reasons that we'll be testing that today. The workshops that we're hosting are also intended to be relationship-driven. That goes back to our goal of building community and building trust between USDA and urban growers. So I'm going to introduce you today kind of superficially, but introduce you to some of the urban growers that we've been working with, and they'll be along for the ride both on the online components with some live Zoom sessions, but then also in person. And then as far as customized components, I think we've talked about the toolkit that we're trying to create as part of this. Pretty much anything that we're teaching, we want available as like a hard resource that you can print out and check. So hoping that we'll have some templates for you to customize so that there's data that you can access pretty easily that is reflective of your location. We're getting collaborative input from cooperators and local experts. I've been traveling a lot. I have not been home over the last month because I've been traveling and meeting with some of the farmers that are in your areas. So really grateful for all of the participation, and hopefully you'll see that in the training. And I already mentioned the fact sheet. So that's what you can expect. There will be space for questions. And also, please just ask me anytime. I hope that we're friends and you can always email me, but I will have some space for questions during this presentation. So if you're thinking of anything, just write it down and we'll make sure we answer them. Timeline. This is the first time I've been able to present the timeline where we're not in year one. Woo, we made it to year two. I'm still here. So the training begins this year, and I'm going to talk a little bit about when you'll expect to see that. As far as what that training that is launching this year looks like, the folks who are taking that training, like I said, it's y'all, it's the CEDs and the PTs from the first 17 cities. What we're asking is to not only participate in the training, but to give us some dedicated course feedback. I hope that I've been saying this enough, but y'all really are experts already in so much of what the curriculum will entail. So our hope is that you're taking this training not only as a sponge, although we hope that there will be information in there that's useful for you, but I'll also have like a separate feedback process, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today, that I'm, again, just hoping that you believe in this project enough that you contribute to that feedback, and give us feedback, please, because we're Cornell, we're not USDA. We're trying to get as much input as possible, but there's just certain things that we won't know how to best communicate to an audience like y'all. You've been such great partners, and I think we're talking a lot, but as you become even more familiar with USDA and your peers, kind of knowing who else will be taking this training, folks who have much less experience in urban agriculture, for example. So we're hoping that you'll contribute some pretty dedicated feedback, because once you go through the first cohort process, we'll get to go through and adapt all of the training. Just keep me busy, make sure that I have some job security. So yeah, we'll go through, we'll update the training to make it as relevant and as useful as possible. The timeline for this, I've seen some of this go up in AgLearn already, really excited, but the goal is to launch that first part of the training, which is what we're calling Program 1. It's 5 or 6 modules, or what we'll now be calling courses, and it's all online at your own pace. We're hoping to give you all about 3 weeks to do that. We're going to launch that this fall. And when I say fall, because I think this is being recorded, fall could be December. So maybe it's December, but maybe we'll get some grace and we can go earlier. But we'll also have a live Zoom session that will take place just right at the back end of the first launch of the online curriculum. So there will still be a live component, even though it will be virtual. Then we plan to launch the second program, so it's 1 training, 2 programs, multiple courses. I'm learning the language of AgLearn as we go. So the second program will launch after the new year, but hopefully like very immediately after the new year. It will be much shorter. And then hopefully we'll also do that in-person training like a couple weeks after that. So my goal, which again, I'm a little nervous about saying this because this is going to be recorded, but my goal is to have y'all completely through the training with feedback given by like April of next year. Okay, yay! Awesome. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to pass these out. Mallory, would you help me? There's some papers that have some of the slides printed on them. We'll just pass these out because I know some of these slides are a little hard to see, but it's just duplicates of the slides. But I just wanted to give an overview again of what you can expect as far as the content, because again, I'm hoping that if you have questions today, you can ask me. The first program, so again, 1 training, 2 programs. The first program is like the introduction. What is urban agriculture? This will be online at your own pace in AgLearn. We'll start with, well, actually I'll get into a little bit of a description of each of these, but you can just see the structure here. And then the second program is application. The second program consists of both an online at your own pace, very quick online at your own pace component on AgLearn, but the last 3 modules is what we're hoping to offer in person, that will be much more workshop driven. And I'm gonna give you just a quick overview of what those modules look like. I will send these slides out. I'm gonna make a few tweaks to the language on these slides. Like I said, I'm learning the language of AgLearn, and I did not know that when I had to submit these slides. So instead of modules, we're calling them courses. It's just little things like that. But our first module, which again, we're calling module 0 here, which is confusing, so I've changed that as well. But this introduction is just level setting, like the history of urban agriculture. The next module is looking at food systems fundamentals, so that's not just what is a system and why systems thinking is something that's important for us to think about in our daily lives, but specifically looking at food systems and then urban food systems as a subset of a system. Then we'll look at recognizing urban agriculture. This is what are production practices, what are the different business models or operational models that show up in urban agriculture. We'll also have a module on urban grower motivations and impact. So that's looking at what are some of the benefits of urban agriculture, what are the reasons that people are driven to go into urban agriculture, and start looking at some distinctions between urban and rural agriculture here. Throughout a lot of these modules, we're introducing this concept of identity and relationships and why having relationships and networks is important, and that will be an important one for this module. We'll have a specific dedicated module looking at innovative production. So while the previous module is looking at what are some production practices, this is the module where we're going to really get into showing examples of hydroponics, aquaponics, but also innovative production like intensive growing that does happen in soil-based agriculture operations, also like pollinator plantings, things like that. We'll look at social ecologies and resilience. So kind of tying the theme back together of food systems, why is resilience important, efficiency versus inefficiency, and basically how urban agriculture contributes to that complete system. So that's just the first half, trying to get a lot done. After you complete all of that, all those 5 or 6 modules will be completed online at your own pace. Like I said, we're trying to give y'all 3 weeks for that. We're also trying not to have any module be more than an hour long. And that's inclusive of video content. You're gonna see a lot of my face, unfortunately. Trying to diversify that, but a lot of this. Also a lot of like short responses. So it's an hour inclusive of the work, not just the video content. So after you complete all of that online, there will be a live Zoom session. This is my informal introduction of the producers that we've been working with. So Cheryl Durant is in New York City. We've got Annabelle Curry in Cleveland, Greg Crafter in Atlanta, Bill and Sandra at the Gary Comer Youth Center in Chicago, and then Stephanie and Darren, who are based in Arizona. I think by the time y'all see the curriculum, we'll have everybody except Stephanie and Darren. We are going to see them in February. So you might not see their videos, but I just want to give a huge thank you to all of you for sending so many incredible producers to us when we asked for folks who are representative of urban growing in your area that we could include in the curriculum. I was overwhelmed by how many just like stunning people we got to talk to. We're really grateful for the folks that we did get to go and meet with. I wish we could have included everybody. Like I truly was not prepared for how many awesome folks we got to talk to. It wasn't just me who decided who we ended up working with. We had a group of folks from the New Ag team and also from the rest of Cornell's urban agriculture team that helped vet the folks we ended up choosing. And like, they were so amazing. So thank you for being such great partners. I can't show you AgLearn right now because we're on slides and not online, but this is just proof, it's evidence that we are getting stuff up in AgLearn. This is the staging environment. And look, it's cute, she's cute. So I'm not gonna go through the details of how to use AgLearn. Y'all know that better than me. I actually could really use someone to just show me how AgLearn works. That's what we're gonna do in Portland. But this is just a sneak peek preview that this is really happening. And you can see you might not be able to see because it's kind of small, but it is very video forward, and we're hoping that this will be engaging and fun, and you'll be like, whoa, how did I get through that training so fast? So engaging. This is just a snapshot, and this is in the packet that we handed out as well. Just a snapshot of then, okay, great, so I've completed the first half of the curriculum online. I did my live Zoom call, I got my questions answered, this is so fun. Then this is a snapshot of what the second half, the second program will look like. So I'm not gonna go through and read all of this, you can read this on your own. I'll just give you the highlights. Challenges facing urban growers, and then specifically looking at capital and land access. Those will be 2 topics that you'll also look at on AgLearn at your own pace virtually. Then local, state, and federal policy considerations, stakeholder engagement, and then how to apply our learnings. Those 3 modules are what we're hoping to do in person as like maybe a 2-day workshop. Sorry if that isn't what happens and we look back at this video years from now, but that's the goal. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that y'all had that context. So if you have questions, you know what to expect and what's coming. As for the feedback process, so this is really for this group, thank you, first of all, for all of you who do choose to participate in the feedback process. But it will be so helpful for us. Like, I cannot do this alone, and I'm trying to pull in as many partners as possible, but until we have a cohort actually go through the training, there's just gonna be blind spots, and we know that. So thank you for anyone who does choose to participate. This year, because the first program and the Zoom call is what we're launching with y'all this year, that's what we're asking for feedback on. So step 1 is just participate. You'll get instructions on how to do so. Step 2 is recording your feedback. We will provide forms to you, either in Excel or like a cute little online Qualtrics form, whatever floats your boat. And then just send the feedback back to me. We will give you instructions on timing and what that looks like. So just contribute as much as you want to, as much as you choose, and know that I take that very seriously, not personally. Please give me the feedback. I would rather have it and then make the change so that when we launch this, we have the 17 cities first. I feel very safe with you all. I'd rather make the change now, and then when this launches with, thousands of people who are totally strangers to me, I want to feel very confident that we did the best that we could. Okay, we blew through that. That was great. So now, if you do have questions, I'd love to hear them. We do want to record this online for folks to be able to hear. So if you have any questions, don't raise your hand. Just go up to, there's these microphones that are on stands, or maybe Vicki can bring you a mic. But yeah, if you've got questions, I would love to answer them now.
And also online questions?
Oh yeah, Alicia, do we have any online questions? Not yet, okay. Yeah, so sorry, folks who are online, please feel free to use the chat. Alicia's gonna be collecting your questions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Leslie Joy. I'm with Mississippi FSA State Office. You mentioned the first quarter of this training process, and that consists of the first 17 urban ag. Mississippi is with the second, I think 10 states. Where do we fall in that?
Yes, y'all will be, my vision is that y'all are cohort number 2 that will go through it. We want to get y'all through the process ASAP. One of the reasons that we're restricting the first cohort, I hate to use the word restrict, but it's a capacity issue for me, honestly. I just want to make sure that I'm as engaged. We're asking a lot of feedback, not even through the feedback process, but y'all will see when you do the training, a lot of the activities are short responses and things that you'll be writing. That's how we're capturing learning. So I want to be able to actually read those, process those, and then we will make some adaptations to the training so that when the second cohort goes through, the next 10 cities, hopefully everyone's hired by then also, so we can have a full cohort, and then you'll actually get to see the next iteration with improvements. So we can say like maybe late spring next year.
Hey, Kyle. I just wanted to ask if there's some process for capturing what we're learning as we go during this training, because the urban ag situation is changing continuously, FSA is changing, everything is dynamic, and if there's some way of building that in to this curriculum so that it continues to evolve, and that's just curiosity on my part.
That's a great question, and I completely failed to mention that one of the asks that the USDA gave to us is to create not only a toolkit, so this toolkit will feel somewhat more static, but printables that you can have and kind of like collect as you go, but also an action plan. So we're asking a lot of questions of y'all, and a lot of them are gonna be open-ended, so you can kind of interpret what you're learning. But all of that will contribute to an action plan. So kind of like as you're going, even though the first half of the training, which we're calling that Introduction to Urban Agriculture, I don't envision that half of the training changing too much over time. It's a lot of like the history, what you can expect on a farm. It's not so much USDA policy. But as you're going through that training, you might think, oh, this is applicable to my work in this way. We'll be prompting you like that. So there will be ways for you to capture that and then save it for yourself and contribute to this larger action plan. So it's like, oh, I learned this. How am I going to apply this at work? But then the in-person training or workshop that we'll do at the end is going to be a lot of me taking a step back and just providing space for y'all to think, okay, like now we're kind of all on the same page. We're using the same language, or we're thinking about these topics for the first time together. Let's have a conversation, and then you all will come up with how you take that forward, and I'll just be their facilitating space. Oh, yeah, Vicky, we've got, yes. One second, I think we'll do a question online, we'll do Nina, and then we'll come to you.
Okay, I'll be right over to you. We do have some questions online. Our first question is, will conservation districts also be able to access these trainings?
Great question. My understanding is that conservation districts are not USDA offices, and this training will be available on AgLearn. So any of those folks who are on AgLearn will have access to this, but like Extension, for example, we're not on AgLearn, so it's just for USDA employees.
And then if you could please repeat for the 10 additional cities for someone online, wanted to know if they could be in the part of the first 17.
Awesome. We're waiting for the second 10 cities will be part of the second cohort, which will happen, we'll launch that as soon as we can, so again, hopefully spring of next year. The reason is, I think it's nice to have a full cohort, and so we want to make sure everyone's hired in to those 10 cities, but also for my own capacity, it's just going to be really hard for me to manage that many people with as much active learning as we're creating, so you will get the opportunity to get the new and improved version of the training next spring. Nina. I was told these don't turn off, so just try again.
Hello? Okay, thanks. You may have covered this, but just to make sure I understand, when we go through the training, we should be thinking about feedback for other USDA employees to be going through the training, because someday this will be offered at large to anyone who has access to AgLearn. Okay.
Yes, that's
So-
exactly right. So when we send the instructions for y'all to go through, it will be in AgLearn, but only folks that have access to like a link will be able to access the training. So we're gonna have to send you all this information. We will include, for those who want to participate with feedback, what those instructions are, but that's exactly right. It's thinking, what the way I've been structuring the feedback so far is like content and structure. Is there something that we said in the training that you're like, whoa, no, that was not right? And that's regardless of who's taking the training, we need to fix that. But then also the structure. How did we present the information? Was it too much of this topic, not enough of that topic? Depending on who we teach this to, I mean, that structure could change. So for y'all, it's keeping in mind who you are, but also who's gonna be taking this after you, your supervisors, the outreach offices, someone who lives in a rural area who's never talked to an urban farmer before, but what they do have in common is that they're all USDA employees. Good question.
Thank you. First of all, I'm kind of confused as to when we talk about stakeholders, and it's only for the USDA employees. As an organization coming a part of the 10 cities that's to be added, and we all faced with stakeholder issues dealing with urban gardening. Then we have community engagement, because the word community engagement, stakeholders, is the same issues that we're faced with as an organization going back to implement the program. So how in the module we are going to support non-government employees as opposed to us organizations out here, if that's understandable?
Oh yeah, I got you. So the scope of our project for Cornell actually is just to support the USDA employees. So this training is going to be available on something called AgLearn, which is their online, like, internal training platform. But Virginia Tech is another one of the partners on this project. They're building tools and resources and spaces to support the cooperators. So while we as Cornell are trying to be present in those spaces to learn from you, this training is like taking the things that we learned from you, or
First, right?
yes, very
You-
much so.
You gotta have those things that we're the operators out here. So how does the employee know without cooperating with the operator, if that makes any sense?
I think I'm following, yes. So like I said, the training itself is just designed for the USDA folks, but I think you may be commenting on the fact that there's a stakeholder engagement module. So that's where we'll be talking about, like, what is stakeholder engagement? How do you engage those folks and have them think about, oh, cooperators, that's someone that we could be working with. How do we work with them? Okay, awesome, but also happy to talk about this more as well. And any ideas that y'all have, like, we're trying to be sponges. So if you've got ideas, we're happy to incorporate them.
I think somewhere along the way, I see a breakdown in communication, because of the same information that you're teaching or you're training the USDA employees is kind of take that information and bring it out to us as the operators. So I don't want to confuse the issue, but it is confusing me.
There's an exciting part and component of that, and we're going to take everything you're saying into consideration. As Kyle's working to build this for the contract with the USDA for the cooperators, it's also being built in a partner platform, and we're going to take this into consideration and see when that partner platform could be released. So I just thank you for that feedback. I think it's important to consider in this room, and we look forward to being able to engage with all of you as we move forward. We're learning a lot about online learning through USDA as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To help out the operator over there that's a stakeholder, in New Orleans, Louisiana, what we have developed with our 1862 and 1890 university, the 1890 has an urban agriculture certification program. So when producers come to the service center, we do form creations, form serial numbers, and let them know about all the governmental programs that's available. And we advise them to connect to the 1890 University, go to the cohort program of the Urban Ag Certification. LSU, Louisiana State University, is the 1862 in Louisiana. So we connect producers on the ground to those educational programs, kind of to answer the question that he was mentioning. That's what we do in Louisiana, so that could be helpful for other USDA employees after going through the cohort to connect the producers to the right organization that's already had it in place with 1862 and 1890 universities. And we go out and do outreach at those events on behalf of FSA programs that's applicable in the parishes that we administer, and it would be the same urban ag piece because they have an urban ag certification program that they can go through at the land-grant universities in our Louisiana state, and I'm pretty sure other states has that same source available to those producers also, as he mentioned, as an operator on the farm like that. That's a way to connect and bridge the gap with that right there.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are resources that exist. The Cornell resource is certainly not the only, but it will be the only one designed just for these USDA folks. Could we switch, instead of my face, could we have the slides, please? You don't need to see me. This is a much better slide. Okay, we're gonna take just like a couple minutes to reset. If we don't have any more questions online, Leisha? Nope, okay, great. We're just gonna take a couple minutes to reset. It would be awesome if y'all are comfortable to maybe a couple folks move up even closer just because we're going to do a stakeholder engagement workshop next, and it will require some chatting at your tables. So the more people you have at your table, the more useful this exercise will be. So we're just going to take a few minutes, 5 minutes. You can get up, use the bathroom, get some water if you need. We're going to reset the tables. So please, come forward if you can, and we're going to put some worksheets and stuff on the table. So come back in 5 minutes. So 11:20. And we will still need those slides. Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Ooh, yes, we are back. So if you could please start making your way back to your seats. If there are people missing from your table and you have their number, call them, make them come back. I shouldn't have started off by being like, we're going to keep this informal, we're friends. If y'all are outside and you can hear me, come back. Okay. Well, yeah, it's a journey. But I guess for the folks online, we're going to get started soon. No, because it's just the slides that we have. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. For the folks online, I think Leisha's been doing a good job monitoring the chat. There is going to be a moment where we send you into what I think is like the equivalent of breakout rooms, and you should have access to some materials online. If you've got questions about that, I think Leisha can manage that in the chat. And for those folks in the room, you should have a packet on your table, now a worksheet packet. We're also going to be asking y'all some questions on Poll Everywhere. And if you're not familiar with Poll Everywhere, it's something that you'll use your phone to contribute to. So if you don't feel comfortable using your phone or you don't have good service, and you don't want to do that, please raise your hand now. And we have some like hard copies of those questions that we're going to need to collect afterwards. Vicki, this is separate. So you're welcome to use either one, but the Poll Everywhere is like very cute and easy for me. So I would prefer that, but happy to take the physical copies as well. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the second part of our program, which is a mini stakeholder engagement workshop. As you saw, stakeholder engagement is one of the core modules of the training that we're building out, and that's part of the in-person training that we want to execute. We're doing this workshop to just get a sense of how y'all are thinking about stakeholder engagement now, because this is such a critical part of the work that we're doing, working with urban growers and nonprofits and community-based organizations. So this is a chance for us to start that conversation, but also we as Cornell Cooperative Extension will be getting some feedback from you. We've got a raised hand over here. Are you looking for one of the hard papers? Or do you just have a question? Can we get a mic over to our friend over here? Not a mic, just paper. Just paper. Vicki's on her way. Great. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce my colleague Mallory Hull to come up to the stage just to tell a story about stakeholder engagement and how maybe we can be thinking about this.
Hi everyone, my name's Mallory Hall. I'm an urban garden specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension Harvest New York, so the same team that Kyle is on. I live in Buffalo, New York, but I'm working in Buffalo, so Erie County, and also Monroe County, which is houses Rochester, if you've ever heard of Rochester. So I'm going to tell a little story about a successful stakeholder engagement. So I loved hearing some concerns about how we can work in other organizations other than the FSA. So I'll give you an example of how I worked with Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District, myself as a Cornell Cooperative Extension regional team member, and then the Extension office in Monroe County. So I'm just going to start off with a few photos. So this is the CCE of Monroe County Food Systems educator, that's Yarmila. She's at one of the 3 garden sites that I'll tell you a little bit about. This is at Living Word Temple of Restoration, where we put in a community garden. Here we're building raised beds at Nielsen House, which is a transitional housing unit for previously incarcerated men. So you can see that we were building some raised beds. We did it in partnership with some of the residents there. And then there's Rick, who was kind of spearheading that site, and they had a lot of really nice success there growing their veggies. Here is Living Word Temple of Restoration again. We put in more raised beds, but we also had a workshop there. So I already mentioned Yarmila, but you can see Yarmila talking about just a wide range of topics at that workshop, about compost, about tomato pruning, about lots of things. So kind of going back to the beginning, so we're talking about stakeholder engagement, and stakeholders can really be anyone, so anyone that you're going to form a partnership with. So we have our partners on the screen here. So like I mentioned, Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District, Cornell Cooperative Extension Harvest New York, so that was me. Cornell Cooperative Extension of Monroe County, so that was the extension office, and I mentioned Yarmila. The Rochester, New York Urban Gardeners, because we put out an ask for interest in some of the funding that I'll talk about. And additionally, kind of zooming out, just the neighborhood community members, because we know that when we put in a community garden, not only does that site benefit, but other community members who may be able to get some produce from that garden. So the project overall was for garden support. So I actually can't remember how it all started, but I still meet monthly with the ED and also some other technical support agents from the Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. So they really wanted to learn more about urban ag. So of course, historically, they're working more with rural growers, but as we all know the importance of urban ag, they reached out to see what's going on, in the city of Rochester. So they, I think, did it the right way and wanted to engage other stakeholders who are already working in that space to build some trust kind of from the beginning and also not repeat any work that has been previously done. So they decided to partner with myself and the Extension Office in Monroe County, because they had a pot of funds that they can kind of choose whatever they want to do with a project, and they wanted to go towards supporting community gardens. So we put out a questionnaire. I thought we had a really good response. We had 20 gardens fill out the questionnaire, knowing that some would be chosen for financial support, for workshop support, for technical assistance. So we are able to support 3 gardens through the funding that Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District provided. We engaged in listening sessions to learn before we kind of released that survey, to kind of get to know the community. We were having monthly meetings in person in Rochester at a library for different gardeners to kind of come and meet them, so they showed up, which I think is really important in terms for stakeholder engagement. And we were able to put 14 raised beds across 3 sites. So this is a picture of the 3rd site. It's a school 42, so in the Rochester City School District. 14 raised beds over the 3 sites. We held 2 workshops, one at the Nielsen House and one at the Living Word. We weren't able to get the 3rd one at the school, just with a lot of turnover and volunteers and folks coming onto the school grounds, but still had a really good partnership with them. And across those 3 sites, we produced 1,600 pounds of produce. So I know we were hearing about photos and numbers, so I think that when you're able to kind of get all of those results, that can really show for a good story. And I just want to give a shout out, maybe they're listening, to Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District, because like I mentioned, they're still showing up. We still meet monthly. They still show up to garden work nights, out of the traditional work hours. They offer up resources. They've come to know a lot of the growers, and I think that I'm going to go into best practices next, and I think that's one of the best things that you can do is to continually show up. And I think that really has moved their relationships forward to being not only someone who shows up, but someone who gets invited. They're invited to garden work days. They're invited to other harvest parties, kind of separate from maybe they'll have funding one day, which maybe they will have additional funding, but it's just because they're part of the community now. So like I mentioned, some best practices. So they were able to identify stakeholders across the spectrum of partners. So it wasn't just other government agencies, it wasn't only Cornell, it was the growers, it was other community members. We've worked with other nonprofits in Rochester as well. They really practiced listening, so not only did they show up to meetings and other community days in person, but they were kind of just like a fly on the wall, just taking it in and engaging and not being extractive. So they just wanted to be there to learn, and they were the first people to say, we don't know a lot about urban growing, but we're here to learn from the folks who are doing the urban growing. They embrace stakeholders' unique situations. So a lot of times with community gardens, they're volunteers. They're working a full-time job or two. They're not able to keep up with their weeding. They don't have access to water. We know a lot of those common struggles, and I think it's important to meet your stakeholders where they're at, and be understanding when things fall through or you need to attempt to get together more than once. I mean, things come up in life, and especially if you have a lot of other things, that are gonna take priority. They really met them where they're at, which is a phrase that I feel like we use a lot. Like I already mentioned, they showed up in person, and they were genuine. They weren't, there just because they thought they should be there. They were there because they love their community. They wanted to use those funds that they could have used for a lot of other things to support those urban growers. And it was, I think you can tell when we have folks coming in from a university or a government agency and they're here to learn, but they're not really that genuine. And I think that the community members can tell, and it goes a long way when you do show up in a genuine way. And I think this was a successful story, but this has taken 2 years. So I think to show up and say, I want to show up in person, I want to be genuine, where are the results? I mean, relationship building takes a long time, and you can't expect those results overnight. But just wanted to share, hopefully, a successful sounding story about stakeholder engagement. So thank you.
Thank you, Mallory. I love that story, especially thinking about soil and water conservation districts kind of like as a proxy almost for USDA, like a government organization that really wanted to do this work but didn't have any of that background and positive history, just showing that, okay, they found a trusted partner that helped them kind of bridge that gap with the community. So I love that as a story. We're going to just share a few fundamental theories about stakeholder engagement and then jump into this workshop. A stakeholder is anyone that has a stake in the work that you're doing, hence stakeholder. They hold a stake. It can be someone that has a claim on your attention, on your resources, or if their work is affected by the work that you're doing. So they're going to be paying attention. That's who a stakeholder is. Or perhaps they're not paying attention, but if they were to pay attention, your work might be easier. So if you can address the needs and desires of stakeholders, include them, and kind of manage that relationship, it can help you be more successful. We pulled out the mission and vision for the USDA. This is from the USDA strategic plan. A lot of what we're sharing today about stakeholder engagement comes from this really awesome seminal work on stakeholder engagement by Bryson and Alston, focused on public sector and nonprofit work. So we pulled out from your own strategic plan, your mission and vision, and you can see how much the USDA intends to serve and also depends on stakeholders already. In your mission, which is to serve all Americans, I'm just gonna stop there. That's a lot of people. There's probably a few groups within that we can break that into, but again, it just goes to show that in your mission, you intend to serve all Americans. So doing a stakeholder engagement workshop can kind of help figure out, okay, well, how do we do that? And then looking at the USDA vision, it breaks it down a little bit further. So not only improving the health, nutrition, and quality of life of all Americans, but also yielding healthy land, forest, and clean water. Land, forest, and clean water, those are not human people, but I think there's an acknowledgement here that stakeholders don't necessarily need to just be human. Helping rural America thrive is another specific subset of the vision. So, okay, that's looking at all Americans, and there's a subset there. But then also feeding the world. Okay, we got big again. All this to say, this is in your history and your strategic plan to be thinking about stakeholders. And again, just to reiterate the importance of stakeholder engagement, which I think Mallory's story really illustrated, it's critical to meet USDA's goals, mission and vision. It's implicit and explicit that you'll be working with stakeholders. But also this idea of resiliency, and when I say resiliency, I mean for your own work and your own plans. If you have partners, if there are other folks supporting you, if you are supporting their work, it will be easier for you to accomplish your goals together. I'm gonna start with our first question here. So you can use your phone to scan this QR code. You could use your phone to go to this link, or you can also use your phone in the packets. This is in your packets as well, so you can see it. But I wanna know, what stakeholders are you currently engaging in your work? We're gonna give y'all a couple minutes to answer this. Ooh, yes. Love the music. No, keep it up, I love that. Oh, you don't have to register, you can just skip that. If you want to put your name, that's fine. I can see it, but you also don't have to do that. And Mallory and Vicky, if you wouldn't mind, just like, if people are having any issues. This music is awesome. Okay, we've got an answer in. Other USDA agencies, that's a great stakeholder that you work with. Food justice organizations, extension, city government, universities, ag organizations in the state, FSA cooperators, nice. Urban producers, yes, that is a very important one. Community gardeners. Yeah, love that. Federal sister agencies, local government agencies. This is awesome. I'm seeing a lot of similarities here. Healthcare institutions. That's a really good one, actually, especially seeing more food as medicine grants coming through. District councils. Okay, this is awesome. Is anyone still adding? Need more time? Okay, cool. So then my next question, now that we are thinking about who the stakeholders are, I'm curious how you're engaging them. So this is a different link, but same process, same thing. You don't have to register, you don't have to put your name down. But that's my next question for you. How are you engaging these stakeholders? We can keep that cute music going. That was all right. Alicia, any questions online? All good? Perfect. And if you're participating online, we should be seeing your responses here as well. So keep them coming in. Oh, great, awesome. Just keep typing it in. Whatever the link is, just answer this question. How are you engaging stakeholders? Don't worry about it, I'll figure it out. Like I said, this is a test. If it's the same question, you're getting the same question, don't worry about it. I will know it's a different answer. Yeah, just put it in. So yeah, the question is now, how are you engaging them? What does that look like? Oh, it deactivated, but now it's active. Yeah. Someone try, because it says that nobody's responded yet, but I know that you have been. All right, don't worry about that. I'm worried about time, so we can just move on because we will be working on this as part of the workshop. But basically, the idea here was just to get you thinking about, okay, who's in my network, who could be in my network, how am I engaging them? Because this is all part of designing a strategic plan for your work. The goal of designing a strategic plan is to accomplish, to think about where you want to be, the goals that you have, and to get you there. So if you were to build out a full strategic plan, which we won't do today, you'd start by thinking, okay, where do we want to go? What's our goal? Now let's examine where are we today, and then how do we get there? And doing a stakeholder engagement analysis is one of those tools that you can use to bridge your gap between where you are and where you want to be. And specifically, that analysis is defining and identifying who your internal and external stakeholders are, how they think about you, how they influence your work, what they need from you, what you need from them, but also how important they are. I don't know if I love that term, but thinking about, okay, how do I prioritize who I work with and how? This is also in your packet, but it's missing the little circle in the middle. So thinking about internal and external stakeholders can be important. Who you work with in your office, you might have a very different relationship with than someone who's outside, someone who you've never worked with before, or an urban garden, for example. So that's the first place to start, is think about not only who do I want to work with, who do I work with, but are they internal to my work or are they external? Even within the USDA, you might think, okay, the EPA, even though that's another government organization, maybe I consider that more external. Or other USDA agencies, you might even consider external, whereas the folks that work at other urban service centers are more internal. So we're not going to go into the details of that right now, but again, it's a good distinction to keep in mind. And this is in your packets if you want to reference it. I'm also including this in your packets because it's impossible to read on the screen, but just as an example from the USDA itself of who your stakeholders could be. So again, this is from the USDA's strategic plan. I have that in your packet so that you can reference it during the workshop, which we're gonna do now. I'm not gonna give you a ton of time for this, but hopefully just enough to get the juices flowing. So you've got a packet in front of you, a worksheet. There's 2 different activities. The first one is just the big table. So just focus on the table, not the quadrants. For the folks online, you should have access to a digital version of this. But I'm gonna give you 5 minutes to just sit and work on your own and think about who your stakeholders are. This is just time to give you some space to start thinking about this. But we're going beyond who are they. We're also thinking about what are your shared goals. Mallory mentioned the term extractive. It's a concern we should all have always when we're building partnerships. Are we doing this because we have shared goals or because I have a goal and I'm looking at that organization as an objective or an object to get me to accomplish my goal? If you don't have shared goals, they might not be a good partner for you. So who are they? What are their shared goals with you? What resources or assets can you offer? That's a great place to start and maybe start thinking about that so you can be humble when you approach them. But then also, what resources and assets can they offer to you? That could be something like meeting space, or it could be access to growers. So just start thinking about that now. I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on that on your own. And then if we've got time, we'll do a couple minutes just to share out with your table. You will not share this with me. You will not share this publicly. So you can write down whatever you want. We're going to give you a few minutes for this. And Mallory and Vicki, if you wouldn't mind just circulating and make sure folks, if they've got questions. Does anybody need a writing utensil? Yes, we need a pen right over here. Vicki, you've got pens? Tell us. Okay, I'm gonna give y'all like another minute to work on this. And we've got one more part of this exercise that we'll do together, and then we'll just do our table share outs after that for the sake of time. Okay, we're gonna bring it back, but there will be a little bit more time to work on this. I just wanna introduce the next part of this exercise, which is designing your stakeholder map. I feel like the idea of working with stakeholders is pretty well known. You gotta make a list, who are the partners that you'd wanna work with, who are the organizations, who are the farmers, but then you might have a list of like, it could be 100 people, 100 organizations that you work with. So hopefully this structure that we just shared helps you start the process of prioritizing, thinking, okay, lowest hanging fruit might be working with someone that has a shared goal. Lowest hanging fruit might be someone I can give something to as opposed to me just asking for something. But another way to help us prioritize working with stakeholders is using a tool like this, which there's no perfect tool, but this is a stakeholder map. It's called a power and interest grid. So again, like this idea of power, like, do we love these terms? I'm not sure, but it is a cool tool. And the goal here is to look at that list of organizations or partners that are like your wish list, and then start thinking, okay, who has the most influence on my work? Who's a group that if I'm gonna work with them, I could maybe accomplish the most because we have the most in common, or they have the most resources, or they have the most interest in what I'm doing. So the way that you look at this graph is thinking about who's got the power side is who has the most influence on the work that I'm doing. If you look at the bottom, there's interest. So that could be groups that, how much are they paying attention to this work? Are they in urban agriculture or not? So an example of totally made up town, someone that may have a lot of power but low interest, is maybe there's a city where the mayor is not engaged in urban agriculture at all. If they were, there's a lot of opportunity there, but maybe they have low interest and high power. So they would be in that keep satisfied and informed box. That could take a lot of work from you to move them to a place of higher interest. So right now, look at the list of folks and organizations that you just started working on, and for now, just start thinking about who's someone on that list that maybe has a lot of influence and a lot of interest, who's in that manage closely box, the top right quadrant. And again, the point of this exercise is to start prioritization, looking at the list of organizations and people that you want to work with and thinking, okay, where's the easiest opportunity right now? But also, if you wanted to build out this exercise and take more time on it, you could fill it out completely and maybe start realizing, oh man, the community members themselves, like maybe some of them have, super high interest but low power. Is that something that I can help alleviate in the work that I am doing? Is that something that I can help bring them to a position of higher power because they have so much interest and it's a group that we really want to work with? So again, just for the sake of today, look at the list that you already created and try and just figure out is there anyone there who would fit in that top right quadrant? We'll give you a couple minutes for this. Alicia, all good online? Okay. I'm seeing some pens going still, but some that are down. Feel free to start talking about this with your tables. If there are questions that you want to share with your group or similarities, we'll give you a couple minutes for that. So now that you've had a chance to think about your own power and interest grids and those of your table, you can continue the conversation totally. But I'd also love if you could try, we'll see if this poll works, try to also answer this question for us. This would be really helpful. How would you like to engage stakeholders but currently aren't? Or another question you could answer is, what barriers to stakeholder engagement are you encountering now? This is going to be so helpful for us when we're building this workshop for real. So please put in your responses. Feel free to share with the table, but I will not be asking you to share with the recording. And it should be working on my end, so I'm really hoping this one works this time. Okay, it's working. I won't read all of these, but one of them that just came through that's so interesting is childcare. That's something that comes up a lot. If you're asking community members, like Mallory said, they've got a lot of asks on their time. So even trying to just like eliminate barriers for the community means knowing who they are and what their responsibilities are. So that's a really good one. Getting time scheduled with council members, totally. And this is great. Y'all can use the little thumbs up function as well if you're seeing something in there that resonates with you. Okay, these are really great responses. Thank you all. And for those online, you should be able to participate in this as well. Feel free to keep adding to this list. I'm going to keep it active. But I'm also going to ask our final question, and then once you answer this, you're welcome to take your break because I think we're using this room again at noon. But keeping in mind that we are just using, thank you so much for participating in this. I do hope it was useful for you, but also it's giving us some great feedback and tools while we build out the larger stakeholder engagement module. So if there's anything that you still want to know or practice while we build that part of the curriculum, please let us know. So you've done like a mini version of this. What would you like to see when we do this again for real? And we will take that into consideration and actually build it into the training. Y'all are curriculum developers too, just like me. So please answer this question, and it should be active. I will stand here until I start seeing responses though, just to be safe. Okay, I'm gonna deactivate that other one because I'm not seeing any responses come in for this one. All right, I just reactivated this question. So hopefully this works. Okay, great. I'm seeing answers come through. Perfect. I see you on the Hatch Act. We got you. Okay, I think that's formally our time together. As always, y'all have been the best, and I am the luckiest that this is the group that I get to work with on this project. If you have any other questions, I am in the brightest red shirt, so feel free to come ask me. I love talking to you. So yeah, just come find me at any point during this week. Feel free to email me. You all should have my email at this point, but just find me. I'll tell you my email address if you need it. I'm not hard to find. Yeah, so I think we're staying in this room for the next session, but I release you from what I'm doing. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating.